Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode on choosing schools for children in the UK. My name is Yetty Williams, and I'm a parenting coach and the founder and CEO of Lagos Mums. Lagos Mums is a community of parents based all around the world who are very intentional about raising children for the future who can stand on their own 2 feet and are responsible, ready to take on the world, and ready to tackle whatever comes their way in the future. One of the biggest decisions we will make in the life of our children is the choice of school that they go to. And as we know from Nigeria, a lot of families send their children to school in the UK. And it's really important that that decision is made from an informed place and that parents are able to assess what school might work for their child, because definitely all schools are not created the same. All schools are not going to be right for every single child. And it's really important that we know which school will suit our unique children. So what we do is to bring different heads of school and admission officers so that we can have a very honest, open conversation about their school, their vision, their mission, the type of students they're looking for, and if that school might be suitable for your child. So with that said, today we have Sean on, and he's joining us from, well, he's not in the UK right now, but he's with Ashbourne College, and he's going to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about Ashbourne. And then we're going to go into some questions just to understand a little bit more about your school. So welcome, Sean.
Thanks, Yessie. Thanks very much. Yes, like you said, my name's Sean. I'm the head of sixth form at Ashbourne College. We are a private independent sixth form college based in central London, specifically Kensington, which is actually quite a nice area to be in. We're about a minute away from the Kensington Palace, so sometimes we'll see the Royals wave at us. And we're about 15 minutes away from Imperial College, if anyone knows that university. We specialise in A-levels. We are predominantly an A-level college, though we do have a small contingent of GCSE students as well. And our aims as a college is to be one of the best sixth forms in the country in terms of experience, A-level results, and then subsequently what happens afterwards, like university destinations or the equivalent. Our aim is to try and help students prepare for their future, for their careers. So if students come to the UK, the majority of them want to study in the UK. So we give a lot of support for university applications. And part of the reason why I'm here and I'm talking to you is, whilst I want a lot of, because we also have an international base of about 50% of our cohort is international. And attracting students from international countries is mainly because they want to come to the UK for university. And so we, as a college, help them do that. And I guess we will talk later on in this podcast about, how students could start preparing even now for the application process for UK's universities, because it is getting more and more competitive.
Fantastic. Thanks for that introduction, Sean. And you're absolutely right, right? It's getting so much more competitive now for our children. And for example, with the new introduction of ChatGPT, which I'd love to ask you about that later, it's very clear, right, that it's not good enough to have the knowledge. It's really not about that. It's about understanding it in depth, in being able to apply knowledge in a way that's creative and innovative. And so that brings me to a question for you, actually. How is Ashbourne College unique in comparison to other schools in terms of how you truly prepare the children? Because they're coming to you for A-levels. So what's unique about the way you prepare them for the world and helping them with applications for university in the UK?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think I've now taught at Ashbourne for 8 years. I teach maths and I oversee the maths department. And it's very different to the school I went to, because when I went to school, I sat in a class of 30, and I actually really enjoyed my school. My teachers were good teachers. But because you've got 30 kids in the class, I could go a whole day and not ask a single question or be asked a question. And that's no fault of the teachers. It's just there's 30 kids in the classroom. Whereas at Ashbourne, the average class size is about 7. And that ranges from small classes of 3 or 4 all the way to maths being one of the most popular, around 10. And what that means is I can create really strong relationships with my students very quickly. And we accelerate the process of learning because of those small classes. And to give you some evidence behind it, Ashbourne is in the top 5% of schools across the country for grade improvement. So when a student comes in year 12 and when they leave in year 13, the rate that they have improved, we're in the top 5%. And the other aspect, additional to these small classes, is we give a lot of extra support outside of the classroom. We have a high ratio of staff to students, so lots of people that can help students out. Every student has a personal tutor who meets with them every single week to make sure that the student is managing their workload, but they're also kind of the hub for parents, teachers, management to communicate with. So there's always someone that parents can constantly get feedback from. And the last thing I would then add is we're quite exam oriented. We're very experienced with the A-level system, and every half term students sit a mock exam and we provide them with feedback. They get used to the exam, the technical vocabulary, the types of questions. So when they get to the actual final A-levels, they're very, very well prepared. I was going to say that was the last thing I said, but I will just add then our university application support is also one of our strengths. And so our top university destinations tend to be UCL, King's College London, but additionally Imperial, Warwick, Cambridge, Manchester, and then for the art students, UAL. So we do quite a good job in terms of our uni destinations as well.
That's great. Great. So in terms of your educational values, I guess, and goals, what would you say you strive to uphold in your school? Because I like what you said about the value add and the children getting better from when they come in to when they leave. And I guess the testament to that is really that every child can always improve. Every child can always get better. And it's really about that one-on-one, focused education in an environment that helps the child to thrive. So what would you say are some of your values as a school that drives your process, your approach to teaching?
Well, you touched upon it a little bit there, which is we have absolutely zero ceilings. We would never, ever think of a student as, I think they'll only be able to get a B, or they're only managing a C, because the teacher's expectations of a student are so incredibly important. And it has a huge influence both on how the teacher delivers content to a student, how much support they give, but also the student can feel the expectation of the teacher and their own expectations are influenced by it. And the number one, and this is actually, there is evidence behind this. There's a guy called John Hattie, who's very big in teaching, who has conducted studies about this. One of the absolutely most important accelerators of learning is a student's own expectations on themselves. If they hold themselves to account, if they constantly are striving to improve, they're going to learn better. And so when we deal with students, we never ever think, okay, you're only going to be able to manage a B. If you've got a B, great, well done. We're always saying, look, you can get an A star. Any student can get any grade. The only thing you're limited by is how much time we have. That's it. And so that mentality and culture is established across the school. Students every half term meet with their personal tutors to look at their reports and say, well, how do I improve in my subjects? And they get very, very specific feedback about how to improve. We give them a lot of meetings. So management, like me, Lee, the director of studies, Amy, head of sixth form, and even the principal will meet with students and talk about, well, are you scheduling your work? And the idea behind that is they build tools for later life. We don't just chuck them to university and say, okay, you're good now, let's see how you get on. They should have the tools, they should be equipped with the tools to deal with later life as well. So that is probably the biggest cultural ethos that we have at the school. Any student can achieve anything. We just have to help them get them there.
Fantastic. I like that there's no ceiling on a child's possibilities or what they can achieve, right? Awesome. Now let's talk about the balance. Academics is one thing, but what other things the child gets up to is really important. So how does Ashbourne incorporate, extracurricular and other things that a child needs to do to be a whole-rounded individual? So by the time you're applying to university and going on, you're not just about your grades.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. And this is where being in London is a real advantage because we obviously have all the opportunities and wonderful things that London has. And yeah, you're right, especially as an international student, if you're coming from Nigeria and you're coming to a completely foreign country and you're young, you are very young. It's you, I think it is, whilst a great experience, it can be a bit daunting. And so the support from Ashbourne is both pastoral, but also providing as many opportunities for them to meet people, to make friends, but also try something new and explore London because it's such a wonderful city. So we have an activities and events officer, and her role is to create lots of trips and events and activities for students to be able to join. That's external. But then we also have clubs that are run every single day, both at lunchtime and after school, that are internal. So the clubs range from more academic clubs such as the natural sciences program, the medical program, etc., to more fun clubs like, for example, knitting. There's a knitting club, or it could be yoga, or there's a climbing club. There's football. There was badminton, and actually a lot of the clubs that we run, especially the most fun ones, were a student's idea. And if there are enough students who want to participate in a club, and we have the staff ready for it, we will support them with trying to create that club. And that's one aspect. But yeah, like I said, we also have the activities and events that are run regularly. So recently there's been theatre trips. They're doing a virtual golf trip. We've got an axe throwing trip. You can ask about axe throwing. It is actually really, really fun. But we get to explore London by doing that as well. We took them to this food market where all they're doing is they're getting some food, they're chatting, they're meeting people, and that's enough of an experience for students to come away thinking, okay, cool, I feel involved, I feel part of the school, I've always got someone I can meet and talk to, and I think that's really, really important.
Interesting. Did you say axe throwing?
Yeah, to clarify, you are throwing at a target, not at another person. But yes, it is axe throwing.
All right, that's a new one. That's definitely a new one. All right, great. So while we're talking about that and the fact that you are based in central London, in a really nice area, but for parents who are sending their children from Nigeria, if you're coming for A-levels, it might be the first time the children are ever leaving home. Can you talk about the two sides? So one being, how do you ensure a safe environment? How can children feel at peace that their children are going to be well taken care of? So what's the environment like in the school environment? And then secondly, in terms of housing and boarding, how do you support boarding children that are coming to the UK?
Yeah. I'll answer that first half. But in terms of the support they're given, we register any student who is either living by themselves or an international student on our database as someone that we need to make sure we watch out for. So our safeguarding team and our pastoral personal tutor team are very, very active with knowing who they need to regularly meet and check in with. So every half term, we regularly talk about the students that we need to check in with. We hold events for international kids specifically, and we just check in with them and make sure everything's okay. Outside of that, because of the nature of our classes, they've developed very strong relationships with their teachers. So I do feel like students always have someone to talk to if they need to. That's independent of, we have a designated person called Fran, who's our designated safeguarding lead, who is advertised. If you do ever need any help, you go specifically to her. In terms of boarding, it's good to talk about this and make it very clear. Ashbourne is not a boarding school. Given our location, I think the cost of trying to have a premises and board would be astronomical. So we aren't boarding, and that does present challenges, especially for parents who are sending their kid abroad. You probably want your students to be completely taken care of, and you know that, and I completely understand why. We have student accommodation that is affiliated with Ashbourne, and so we can provide solutions for student accommodation. The Nigerian students who are studying with us at the moment, they study at an accommodation about a 15-minute walk away. And it's very similar to university dorms where they have a room. It's a nice accommodation, but it's self-catered and it's independent. So the difference, I guess, with the boarding environment is everything's done for you and you're completely taken care of in that regard. Whereas our environment is a lot more independent. And I think initially, at the beginning of the year, we try and give a bit of extra support with that because it can be a bit of a culture shock, understandably. And I think that that's something that parents should really consider. If their child is someone who is very dependent and is not going to do so well by themselves, especially in a foreign city, then Ashbourne may not be the right place. It might not be. We are normally better off for students who are a bit more independent or who like their independence. That's a very key part. They like their independence. And then we just give them as much support as we can because they are young and they do need help.
Okay. All right, got you. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. So one of the questions I have also is in terms of, measuring how the children are doing and tracking their progress. Can you talk about, I mean, I've heard obviously it's a very hands-on environment. The teachers are very plugged into the children because it's small class sizes, so you tend to get to know the children quite well. But what kind of support and how do you track the students' progress? And how do you ensure that that communication is happening with parents on an ongoing basis so there are no surprises?
Yeah, I think there's kind of 4 ways that parents are kept in the loop. And I'll try and go through them as quick as possible so it doesn't get boring. But the first one is every half term, students will receive a report written by their teachers, giving them subject-specific feedback. It has their mock results and it has their current working grade, which is our assessment of where the student currently is in their subject. So that's basically every 6 weeks, a parent is given an official report saying this is how they're doing. Additional to that then is we have an attendance officer. If there's ever any kind of attendance issues, a student who isn't in class, a student who is late, she is so good at just getting straight to the student as fast as possible, communicating with parents saying, what's going on, do you need any help, etc. So you'll never get a situation where a parent is told, oh, we haven't seen this person for 2 or 3 days. No, that would never happen. On the day itself, if they haven't attended a class, a parent will know.
Okay.
And then the other 2 aspects is a proactive and a reactive element. When we feel like there is any kind of concern or we think a student isn't performing as well as they could, normally management and personal tutors will proactively meet with them. And then we will email them and the parents summarizing the meeting. And if we feel like there is a real concern, parents are invited to the meeting as well. So that's the proactive element. The reactive element is we also really, really encourage parents to communicate with us if there is ever a concern, if you want extra feedback, if there's questions or help. The idea of having personal tutors at Ashbourne is they're there to field those questions as well. And so it actually helps us with our job. If a parent does have a problem, does have a concern, they actually raise it rather than say nothing and then we hear about it later on when the situation might be harder to mitigate.
Very nice. Okay. Clear, very clear. Thanks. So moving on in terms of, we've heard quite a bit about, the support children receive, the class sizes, how hands-on it is, and to prepare the children to do their best and go on to the best university for them. Can we talk a little bit about the application process? Through what a typical application process looks like. When should a family who's considering Ashbourne College for their son or daughter, when should they be starting the process? And just take us through a high level what they need to keep in mind. And then lastly, you will share with us what type of student will thrive at Ashbourne.
Okay, great. So in terms of the university application process, in the UK, we have a system called UCAS. And every student who is applying to UK universities will generally apply through this system. And you have to write what's called a personal statement. It's about a page long where you dictate your interest in the course you're applying for, but also your skill set and why you would be good for the course. Now, I'll come back to that because that's probably the most important aspect of the application from the student side. You also have to fill in an application form. Largely, that's quite administrative and it takes about 20 minutes, really. And then the third aspect is the school will write a reference and predict grades, which gets sent to universities. So our system is a little bit weird in the sense we give universities predicted grades, the universities will give an offer back, and then students have to meet the offer with their actual grades. But from a student's perspective, the personal statement is the thing that's going to really differentiate them. Because let's assume now that you're applying for medicine. Your predicted grades are going to be all A stars, but so are all of your competitors. Every student's going to get A stars, and therefore that doesn't differentiate you anymore, as bad as that might be. So your personal statement is what's going to be really key here. Medicine, you've also got entrance exams, but let's focus on the personal statement. How do you differentiate yourself? It's not by saying, I study biology, chemistry, maths, and I love those subjects, because that's obvious. That's what all students studying medicine want to study. So we've got to think about, and this is a really key word, super curricular. There's extracurricular, which is I'm going to do sports, I'm going to do music and art and drama. I do all these things outside of school, and those are my extracurricular activities. Those are great. They make you a well-rounded, holistic student. But supercurricular is when you are exploring within the subject of interest further than what you're studying at school. And the reason why that's valued so highly by universities is A, it shows you're genuinely interested. Like if someone's actually gone away and read something or done some work experience, taken on a project, done a course, they're not going to have done it for the sake of doing it. They actually are interested in the subject. And the additional thing about supercurricular activities is you develop yourself. You learn by doing those things. You become a better student. You become clever, and you become more informed within your subject. And so universities can see what things you're doing and think, well, actually, yeah, this person, A, is obviously clearly interested, and B, has done quite a lot. They'll be ready for the course. And so if you take an example like medicine, now the requirements, you basically have to do work experience if you want a competitive application. And you've got to have done things like projects and research and read books that are relevant to medicine. If you don't have any of those and you're relying purely on your grades, you won't have a competitive application. So at Ashbourne, well, for any student in the UK, you apply in year 13, in your last year. But at Ashbourne, we start preparing them within year 12 as soon as we get them, really, because it does take time to do all of these different supercurricular projects, especially when you're doing your A-levels at the same time. So my advice directly to students or parents listening to this is, no matter how old you are, start doing some stuff. If you're 14 and you think, oh, but I'm not applying for 3 or 4 years, it's okay, I've got time, don't waste your time. You're going to look back and think, oh God, I had all those summers where I was doing absolutely nothing. I could have read a book, I could have got some work, whatever, because that application deadline, it comes quick, and you don't want to be at a point where you thought, I should have done more.
Gotcha. That's a great point. Thanks for explaining that. So that's for the application process for uni. Can you talk about the application process for Ashbourne itself?
Oh, sorry. Is that the original question?
No, it's okay, but it's fine, because this is good. It's almost like walking backwards. So when you know what the process is for applying for university, and with everything you said, for somebody listening, even if your child is a year or 2 out from going for A-levels, there's so much you can start doing now. So could you also then talk about how to apply to Ashbourne and what the process is and what kind of student thrives in your environment?
Yeah, of course. So we, on our website, we have an admissions process. You can click and fill in the form there, but you can also contact us through email, admissions@ashbournecollege.co.uk. And essentially, if you register your interest, we will take over in terms of what the next steps will be. And what we require from students is they normally have to write a personal statement saying why they're interested in applying to Ashbourne. They will need a recent report. We'll need to show for a school report. They'll need to demonstrate that they've got a good enough level of English, either through IELTS or through whatever qualification they're doing. If they're doing GCSE English, for example, then they'll be fine to go and do A-levels. And then the next process, once we've received all the documentation, is they'll have an interview, normally with someone like me or Lee, the Director of Studies, so we can better know the student and get to know a bit more about their character. And they normally sit a test, either a maths test or a critical thinking written test, so that we get an idea of their foundation. And then we can kind of help them with their subject choices. And that's generally the process. So Ashbourne is selective in a sense, but we select more than just the academic foundation. It's also about character. If you're a student who's willing to really go the extra mile, if you're willing to work hard and you're willing to listen, then we're likely to be more lenient if, for example, you haven't quite met the academic requirements we'd want for you to go and do A-levels.
Very clear. And is there a deadline, application deadline?
We have a rolling application system. So obviously you want to try and hit the ground running. Okay, for example, we do our 2-year program will start in September. You ideally want to start in September, but for some reason, let's say you start in October, we'll try and make it work. But we have a 2-year program. We have a 1.5-year program, what we call an 18-month program, where students start in January. And then some students are able to do a 1-year course as well. And often those are students who either they're resitting their A-levels or they come from an international background where they've already completed quite a lot of the content. So we do have different programs and we can adjust them depending on the level of the student.
I see. All right, fantastic. That makes sense. And in terms of Nigerian children coming out to the UK to school and they need, student visas and all of that, what would you say is a good time to start that process? Because we know all the dates keep changing and evolving. So for a child to have more than enough time, for example, to start school in September at Ashbourne, when would you say is a good time to get the application in?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I don't think I'm equipped to tell you an exact timeline because it is ever changing. Actually, at the moment, I know there has been difficulties with the visa process. My suggestion, and this is, I think if you register your interest with us as early as possible, we have a member of the admissions team who is a visa specialist who will help support the application and help with that. And so if you register early and get everything done as early as you can, it allows for us to get the visa part of it done as soon as possible because that can take quite a bit of time. You're absolutely right. And we have some situations where students have registered, they've done everything, their visa's been delayed by a week or two, and its term has started, but we will still support the student. Even if they're not there on site, we can use online tuition. They'll get all the same level of resources. So whilst we don't want to get to that situation at all, it's not like you can't come or get any kind of tuition until you're here. But yeah, to reiterate the point, send us some interest as early as possible, which allows us to get the visa process as early as possible because it is quite tricky at the moment.
That's it. Well, thank you. Thank you for explaining so much. I think it's very clear, the type of environment that Ashbourne College offers, the type of students you're looking for, and also because it's a fast period of time. A-levels is 2 years or 18 months or 1 year, as you said. It's pretty quick. So what I'm taking away is whoever's listening to this and considering, applying to Ashbourne College or going to school in the UK, the earlier you start preparing yourself, the better, because it goes quickly. And from the year of your A-levels, you are essentially starting your process of applying to university, right? The process has started. So it's really important that you have a little bit of awareness of what's required so you can start working towards that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have one slightly random question for you. What's your view of ChatGPT? Is it positive or is it the death of education as we know it?
It's definitely going to impact education massively. I think it's going to be a positive thing overall. I think we have to adapt our practices to manage it. So, I mean, a lot of administrative tasks from our end as a school become a lot easier through something like ChatGPT. And let's remember, this is one iteration of AI. It's going to ever evolve and get better and better. So I think the idea of trying to prevent it or ban it isn't going to work. And actually, you have to embrace it a little bit in terms of its really useful features like grammar checks or rewording a statement or whatever it is. Those are actually useful administrative tasks. From a learning perspective, yes, we need to avoid the situation where a student can say, please write me a 2,000-word essay on the fascist regime in Italy and then hand it in, because you can't really do many plagiarism checks on it. I think because we would start talking about this, exams become more important because you can't use ChatGPT in an exam. And so they will be a very, very key indicator of whether a student actually has been revising and working. And so obviously you've got the big formal exams at the end of the year. We have mock exams, but what we're doing now is we're also trying to introduce the idea of doing a lot more like little mini tests in class. So let's say a student's done homework for me. Well, maybe in the beginning of my class, I'll do a little mini test or like a little quiz on the board that's not meant to be very, very intense, but I'll be able to determine straight away if they've actually done the work. If they're doing okay in that class, they understand the topic and they've done the homework, it'll be a breeze. If they've used ChatGPT, it will be very, very evident.
Right, right. No, great. Thanks for that balanced view, because indeed everybody's up in arms about it. And I think I was doing some research that suggested that when Google came out, when the internet came out, educators too were all like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But now you can't imagine a student doing any kind of project that doesn't involve going online to do some research. It's all about digital literacy and teaching them how to use it responsibly. And I think a child who was already on the path to wanting to probably do work and turn it in that's not theirs, I think there's more of a character challenge there that needs to be dealt with. It's not so much the tool, it's more the thinking behind why are you learning what you're learning. And you're not smart if you cover your knowledge under a halo of what you actually don't understand. So but thanks for answering that. That's just my personal, I've been asking educationists in different formats. So what's your view? You think it's positive, or do you think it's the death of education?
Yeah, it is really tricky. I think I do think it's going to completely change everything, and I think, like I said, it's gonna keep evolving, and you won't be able to really fight it. So we've got to embrace it. But you said a really key word there, which is responsibly use it. And I think teaching students how to use it responsibly is very, very important. I read a recent thing about a lot of students in Gen Z students who think that a lot of schools don't prepare them for a digital world. And that's maybe a fair comment. And so there probably needs to be a bit more of an onus in schools to think about, well, how do we improve the students' digital literacy? If these tools are out there and they're actually incredibly useful, I don't think it's fair to say you're not allowed to use it. I think it's about using it responsibly. But like you said, we want them to be smart. We want them to understand things in life, and we want them to be able to apply their knowledge. So the teaching has to adapt a little bit for that, and the assessment has to adapt a little bit for that.
Oh, great. Thank you. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thanks a lot, Sean. I really enjoyed myself. And just as we're starting to wrap up, could you share how people can get in touch with you if they have more questions and they just want to learn more about Ashbourne College? And before you wrap up with how they can get in touch with you, if somebody happens to be in town and wants to come in to visit at the school, is that possible?
Yes, absolutely. So I don't know, yes, if we're able to share my email address alongside this podcast. I think that's probably one of the easiest ways to contact me via email. And like I said, on our website, the Ashbourne College website, there's a lot of contacts for the admissions team as well, if you want any more information. I myself will most likely be back in Nigeria as soon as I can, not just because I like it and the food, but also to meet parents and students. So we will hold other events, most likely in Lagos. And I'd keep an eye on that as well. That might be advertised through LagosMums. In terms of if you are in the UK, yes, absolutely. Please do come and see, because I think a big part of this decision, and it is a big decision, is coming to the premises and seeing what we're like. When you see us in action, you'll probably have a better opinion than me just talking about the school. Again, you can either contact us ahead with admissions. I mean, that's the ideal thing, because we can give you a tour, where you can meet key personnel. But if, for example, you come on the day and you want to decide, we will try and manage that situation as a walk-in. But like I said, if you contact us in advance, we can give you a much more holistic day when you come in.
Great. Awesome. So yes, when we post this now on all our platforms, we will put your email address, which you've said we can share. And we'll also put a link to your website so that anybody can follow up, and if they have questions, they can get in touch with you.
Yeah? Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Yetty.
Thank you so much, Sean. It was great having this conversation. And to everyone who's listening today, thank you for tuning in. And as always, I'm Yetty Williams, founder CEO of LagosMums, and we have regular conversations just to help parents make the best informed decisions for everything relating to their family and their children. And particularly today, we had Sean talk to us about Ashbourne College and what to be considering when you're trying to get your child ready for A-levels, school in the UK, and on to university as well. So thanks again for tuning in. All right. Bye, everyone.